With over 1,000 Pokemon released in the long history of this franchise, we have now seen almost every possible dual-type combination in existence. In fact, the Gen 9 games introduced a bunch of new type combinations we had never seen prior, like the Grass-Fire type Pokemon Scovillain, and the fan-favorite Bug-Dark type Pokemon Lowkicks. But there are still some type combinations we have yet to see in the official games. 9. To be exact. It makes you wonder, how good would these type combinations be in an official game? Some of these unseen type combinations look like they'd be absolutely horrible, but others are potentially incredible. Maybe the reason we haven't seen them yet is because they're afraid of how powerful they might be. By referring to fan-made Pokemon and custom competitive metagames that do have some of these type combinations, perhaps we can get a small glimpse of how these might look in the next official game. I'm sure Gen 10 will introduce some of these unseen type combinations for the first time ever. Let's go over all 9 of these never-before-seen type combinations and speculate how good they might end up being. But first, thank you all for helping me achieve the milestone of 90,000 subscribers. Thanks to you, the Pokemon Muck has finally achieved his lifelong dream of transforming into a horse. His speed stat has now increased significantly. How will this affect our lives moving forward? Only Jimothy Cool subscribers may have such information illuminated to them. Thank you. The first dual type here that we've never seen before is normal ice. There's never been a single normal ice type Pokemon in the series. Thematically, I don't know what ice type you could throw normal onto. Seems like a difficult type to create a concept for, and for that reason, it's also been a bit challenging trying to find a normal ice type Pokemon in any fan-made competitive metagame. So I've taken it upon myself to create one of my own. This is Fregula. His name is a genius combination of the word frost, which denotes ice, and regular, because he's just a regular guy. He's got a plain white shirt on. He doesn't particularly stand out in any area, not only in his personality, but his stats are sort of middle of the road, but he's a normal ice type with the ability Chill Guy. It's a new ability that I've invented, which on hit, it creates snow on the field. Because if you try to start a fight with a guy like this, he's probably gonna remain cool, calm, and collected. That's why he creates snow on the field on hit. How much competitive potential does Fregula here have? Would a normal ice-type Pokemon look like this? I think probably. I can't imagine a normal ice-type Pokemon in the official game having very high stats. It's probably some guy you find in the mid-game who's not that remarkable. I've given him a little bit of utility with the snow setting ability. That could be good. Maybe he's got Blizzard. And the normal ice typing, it's bad. Frankly, it's very bad. You're ×4 weak to fighting instead of being the usual ×2 weak. It might be better than just mono ice though, because you do gain a ghost immunity, so you got some opportunity to hit the field in some capacity. That might be better. You're way weaker to fighting, but perhaps the trade-off is worth it in this instance. You can imagine many mono ice type Pokemon might actually be buffed if they got a normal dual type. Think of like Galarian Diamanitan. It's already dying to most fighting type hits anyway, but if it has ghost immunity, that could give it way more entry points and actually enhance its effectiveness. I would probably expect Fregula or any other normal ice type Pokemon that ends up existing to end up in the ZU tier. They would need a lot to make up for the typing. Ice types already end up in ZU most of the time, like Avalugg, for example. So I don't think normal ice type would be much better or have much more success than just mono ice type. Up next, normal bug is another typing we've never seen before. Probably because it sounds kind of boring. There's a lot of mono bugs, no normal bugs though. You could honestly probably chuck normal onto a lot of different mono bug types and it would fit. Like Spidops could be a normal bug, why not? But once again, I've not found any examples of normal bug types in any fan-made competitive formats, so I've made my own. Here he is, Unremarknid. He's got bad stats, as most bug types tend to have, and let's be honest, if this Pokemon did exist in the actual games, there's no way they would give it a unique ability. It would probably just have Swarm or Shield Dust like every other bug type does. Just slap that on and call it a day. So Unremarknid here would probably be horrendous and probably be ranked in a low tier. The typing normal bug, I mean, at least normal gets its fighting type weakness cancelled out and it becomes neutral to fighting thanks to its complementary bug type. Beautiful. Amazing. And you gain a ghost immunity. It's probably quite a bit better than mono bug type, which is one of the worst typings you can have. Mono bug is really bad. Normal bug is a little bit of an improvement, but usually if bug types are good competitively, they've got an even better typing line than that, like bug fighting or bug steel or even bug dark, like low kicks is pretty good. This, I don't think that normal stab is offering you anything. Ghost immunity is something, but it's not enough. This would suck. We can move on from this. There has also never been a normal steel type Pokemon. We're noticing a trend here, folks. A lot of these are normal dual types. It's making me realize the normal type has a thematic problem. How do you determine whether something is regular or not? What makes Ursaluna Blood Moon normal? That's abnormal in my eyes. I don't know. You could chuck normal in something like Kling Clang, that'd probably make thematic sense, but I don't know. It doesn't necessarily need to be normal. It doesn't scream normal. So what would a normal steel type look like? Maybe something like this? Another gym creation here. Would it be good? No. No, it would not. You'd think this might be alright, because steel is a decent type as a baseline, and yes, your times 4 weak to fighting, but you've got other advantages, and now you're immune to ghost, sounds okay. I don't know though, most ghost types just have Focus Blast for coverage, and you obviously just get demolished in a single hit by Focus Blast, so that's not fun. And then normal rock, I mean, come on, this would also suck. Times 4 weak to fighting as well, rock isn't even good to begin with. You're immune to ghost, but at what cost? At what cost? It would look something like this, and it would be ranked in ZU where it belongs. Now let's move on to the more interesting types, finally. Up next is a type combination that seems a bit more promising. The Fairy Fire type combination is one we have never seen before. This one has a lot of potential for a really cool Pokemon design, and such a typing could have a lot of really good offensive qualities. We do have a frame of reference to look at here because the Pokemon Hemoglobin from the Create a Pokemon format is a Fairy Fire type. Create a Pokemon is a really cool fan-made format with custom Pokemon in it that are all pretty nicely designed and visually really interesting. And Hemoglobin is one of them, and this is an A+ ranked Pokemon on the VR. This guy has some really good abilities to choose from with Pixelate, which converts normal type moves into fairy type moves, and Intimidate, which simply lowers the attack of the enemy by 1 stage on switch in. Pixelate seems to be the more popular option for some really cool offensive tools. And Hemoglobin, despite poor stats, is a great choice. Fairy and Fire are pretty complementary, because Fire is able to hit the steel types that resist Fairy, and do big neutral damage to other Fairy resistances. The stab combination is really nice, and defensively this is not too bad either. You lose your steel weakness because Fire resists steel, so that gets cancelled out. You do have a lot of weaknesses here like ground, poison, and water, but this has plenty of opportunity to hit the field with that beautiful dragon, immunity, dark, and fighting resistance, and even fairy resistance because of that good old fire typing. This can be used as a physical attacker and be immune to burn as well, which is very valuable. And this has extreme speed with Pixelate, which is a really powerful combo. So if they design a fairy fire type like this in the main series, it could succeed pretty easily. Fairy fire has a lot of advantages. It's a really cool typing, and it seems to be extremely promising. And it would definitely be perfect for some sort of physical attacker because of that burn immunity. Up next is Ice Poison. This one sounds like it could be really cool, and we do have a frame of reference for this one in another fan meta game. In the Fusion Evolution pet mod, there's a Pokemon called Crygarganel, which is a fusion of Gengar and Cryogonal, and it's an ice poison type. This is a format with a bunch of specifically made and carefully designed fusions that I think is quite cool. I did a video on this if you're interested in learning more about that. And there's some unique type combinations here as a result. Crygarganel seems like a decent Pokemon in the format. This player ranked it around C on their viability rankings. It does help that it has Levitate, so it's immune to ground, which would otherwise be a weakness. If an official ice poison type had Levitate, that would be a big help, of course.
Do ice and poison complement each other that well?
Kind of. Poison does cancel out your weakness to fighting, making you neutral instead. It's probably an improvement over Mono Ice because of that, and also if you factor in the poison immunity that you gain. This Pokemon is a fast special attacker, which is probably a good fit on a Pokemon with such typing, taking advantage of the powerful stab. Offensively, I don't know about the stab combo complementing each other. They're both good types, but both are very vulnerable to steel. Steel is immune to poison and resists ice. Ice does hit ground types, which poison cannot hit, so that's complementary. Like many ice types, I think if this is fast enough and threatening enough, it could probably overcome the shortcomings of ice typing. And the poison typing would probably at least help it a little bit to get on the field against more things, which is what you want. Because remember, ice type has no resistances at all, other than ice itself. So it's really tough to get a mono ice type onto the field and actually start threatening things. At least an ice poison type can switch in against fairy type attacks, enemy poison type attacks, status clicks like toxic, and other such options. Crygarganel is a good example of what a functional ice poison type could look like. Maybe we'll see if such a Pokemon comes to exist in Gen 10. The next one is one that a lot of people want to see and are probably surprised doesn't exist. Bug Dragon has never been seen. This one is a recipe for an epic Pokemon. Some say that Flygon should be a bug dragon. He kind of evokes a bug-like appearance. We do have a frame of reference for this one in Create a Pokemon. There is a guy called Miasmore. This is an awesome fan-made Pokemon, I must say. Very impressive. It's a bug dragon type that seems to be primarily a physical attacking win condition Pokemon. It has neutralizing gas as its ability, which is interesting, which of course disables opponents' abilities. So it can bypass unaware Pokemon, Earthquake through levitate Pokemon. It has the loaded dice scale shot combo and often uses Swords Dance as its boosting move of choice. It's a pretty effective Pokemon in the format that can be very scary. But how's the Bug Dragon typing on it? Bug Dragon seems alright. You are weak to Rock, of course, which can restrict you a little bit. At least boosts exist in the modern world to bypass Stealth Rock weakness. But you're gonna have struggles against flying types. At least Dragon cancels out your weakness to Fire. That's nice. And Bug grants you a lovely ground resistance, so that's good. And a fighting resistance. So those two resistances and all the nice resistances that come from Dragon typing give this some pretty decent defensive merit, actually. Miasmore does get U-turn, which is really nice with Stab. I could see a Bug Dragon type being a really good U-turn pivot with a really hard-hitting move that keeps momentum up. That's probably the best offensive benefit Bug typing would provide. I'm sure if they made a Bug Dragon type, we would probably have pretty good stats because it's a cool typing. They want people to use it. They want it to be probably an endgame Pokemon. Maybe even the pseudo-legendary of Gen 10 will be Bug Dragon. You never know. So I would predict this would be a pretty successful Pokemon, especially if it gets Stab U-turn, because that would make up for a lot of its shortcomings. That would be really good. Sounds promising to me, this one, and very thematically cool as well. I look forward to seeing an official Bug Dragon type. Up next, Rock Ghost. There has never been a Rock Ghost type Pokemon. I think it'd be very easy to make a cool Rock Ghost type. That would not be difficult. I think it's pretty likely that we'll see this in Gen 10 even, I would say. And there is a little bit of a frame of reference here. The Fusion Evolution format has Relish Shadow, which is a fusion of Relicanth and Marshadow, and it is indeed a Rock Ghost type Pokemon. This typing is not fantastic, honestly. It feels like a bit of a waste even that you're a Rock type, because Ghost is already immune to normal, and Rock resists normal. So you basically erase a resistance, or the resistance is useless. You gain Flying resistance, and Fire resistance. And you have a ×4 poison resistance now. Seems a bit like overkill. I don't know if that's necessary. And there's a significant cost for all this. You're weak to ground, water, and grass now. And you're weak to steel types, which seems bad. A Pokemon like this could be good as a hazard setter though. A Rock Ghost type would likely have Stealth Rock in its moveset, and Relish Shadow does have Stealth Rock, and it is immune to Rapid Spin inherently. So it would be a bit more difficult to 1v1 or get an advantageous early game sequence against such a hazard setter. Relish Shadow does not seem to be that popular in the Fusion Evolution metagame. Its ability is Stone Wheel, which combines Rock Head and Technician. Its stats are pretty middling. It has a hard-hitting Head Smash and options like Technician boosted Shadow Sneak, pretty good coverage, but seems like its defensive shortcomings give it a lot of problems. A Rock Ghost type would probably excel if it had Stealth Rock and Spikes, and that would be quite solid. Maybe Taunt as well. And then it would be relegated to the role of a hazard setter. But as an offensive threat, it would need to be really impressive on the stats side, I think, to make up for the weakness. I would be eager to see what a Rock Ghost type looks like, though, in Gen 10, and we'll have to wait until that comes to pass. And finally, Ground Fairy type has never been seen, and this is the best unused type combination here. This would absolutely be amazing. You would have to really suck in every other area to be bad as a Ground Fairy type. This has so much potential for competitive success. Ground and Fairy are both fantastic defensive typings on their own. Ground types are immune to electric moves and sandstorm damage. Fairy types are immune to dragon type attacks. You've got a rock resistance. Ground and Fairy is complementary because you're neutral to poison now. You're no longer weak to poison. You've got all those beautiful resistances provided by Fairy typing, dark and fighting resistance, as well as bug resistance. And the types complement each other fantastically on the offensive side, because steel types resist fairy, poison types resist fairy, but ground hits those two types super effectively. Same with fire. Fire resists fairy, ground beats fire. They're perfect together. Ground and fairy would be amazing. And what's also cool about this typing is that it would be perfect against Miraidon, the cover legendary of Pokemon Violet, because both of Miraidon's stab types would be completely destroyed. You're immune to both dragon and electric. There is a frame of reference here, because in the Fusion Evolution format there is a Pokemon called Whimsy Sands, who is a fusion of Whimsicott and Sandy Shocks. And this Pokemon is pretty good. This player ranked it in the B+ tier in Fusion Evolution. It's got the Moonblast Earth Power Stab combo, and that's really tough to deal with. Also happens to have U-turn, which is really useful. This particular ability is a fusion of Infiltrator and Photosynthesis, so you can use a booster energy on this. You can also bypass Substitute, which is really nice. And yeah, this is a really solid Pokemon in the Fusion Evolution format. I would be surprised if they made a Fairy Ground type and it sucked completely. It would have to really be terrible in every other area, because the typing is such a recipe for success. I can't even imagine this being bad. And there are some honorable mention type combinations that technically exist, but not exactly. For example, Ice Fire is a type combination that only Darmanitan Galar Zen form has access to. So an alternate form of a Pokemon that has specific requirements to achieve that form is an Ice Fire type, but an actual Pokemon has never been Ice Fire type. And I think that, to be frank, this typing would be absolutely horrendous. Ice and Fire is ×4 weak to Rock. That's an absolute death sentence, so boots are mandatory, but then you're also weak to all the things that Ice is usually weak to, except Steel, I guess. You're neutral to Steel now, but you're weak to Ground, Water, Fighting. I guess you're neutral to Fire, that's good, but I don't know, folks. I think an Ice Fire type would need some real incredible stats elsewhere to make up for this. As an offensive threat, it could be good. Ice and Fire are pretty complementary offensively, as Fire types hit the Steel types that resist you. Maybe if you have Freeze Dry, this would go crazy, because you could also hit Water types for super effective stab. That would be pretty damn powerful. This could only work as a really fast offensive threat, though. If it's slow whatsoever, this would be getting killed within moments. And then, of course, you have Dragon Fairy type, which only existed so far on Mega Altaria. I think this pretty much counts. Mega Altaria, you could view that as a genuine Pokemon. But it's never been on a standalone Pokemon in its base state. And this typing would clearly be excellent. Mega Altaria is a clear example to look at, and that Pokemon is great in the Gen 6 OU metagame. It would depend on the Pokemon, of course, what its stats and abilities are, but the typing itself, recipe for success. You're a Dragon type immune to Dragon. That's beautiful. That alone is a huge benefit. The typings are so complementary, and it's mostly upside to have that extra Dragon typing on top of Fairy. Gain an Ice weakness, but you get so many more useful resistances and access to Dragon stab moves, which are usually good. I'd love to see a Dragon Fairy type. Seems like it's a cool typing with a lot of potential. And that does it, folks. What do you think your favorite of these unused type combinations are? I would personally love to see a fun Bug Dragon type, but what about you? And what are you hoping to see in Generation 10? How could they make these types interesting? Let me know down below in the comments, and thank you very much for watching.